that's where we're at.
Okay, keep us posted.
I'm gonna do my best to get that thing working while we have the other two come on. Okay? Yeah. Sure. I think that is.
be the end of the hearing.
Yes.
Where are they deep? Oh, wow. Yeah. Boys, they're everywhere. Is that sending a mic level or line level? Okay.
Please rise. The County Court of Saline County is now in session.
Thank you. You may all be seated. So we have, are you Jeremy Austin?
Yes.
And you're Amber Sutton?
Yes.
All right. I need to advise both of you of your rights and the procedures in court, charges and possible penalties, and then we'll take up on an appointment of counsel. You have, first of all, the right to be represented by an attorney at all stages of the proceedings. You may hire an attorney of your choice. However, if you wish to be represented by counsel and cannot afford an attorney, one could be appointed for you at public expense. You'd be required to answer questions about your financial situation in order to determine if you qualify for court-appointed counsel. You have a right to a speedy trial and a trial by jury on any offense which carries the possibility of a jail sentence. At that trial, you're presumed to be innocent unless and until the state proves you guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. You have a right to confront witnesses. The state might call to prove its case. You have a right to present witnesses in your own defense. You can testify yourself if you choose to. However, if you wish to remain silent, that silence cannot be used against you for any purpose. If you are not a citizen of the United States, you are hereby advised that a conviction of the offense for which you have been charged may have the consequence of your removal from the country or the denial of naturalization pursuant to the laws of the United States. If you enter pleas of guilty today, that means both that you admit that you did what you were charged with doing and that you waive or give up your right to have a trial. If you're found guilty, either because you plead guilty or because the state is able to prove your guilt at trial, you would then be given the opportunity to tell the court anything you think should be considered for sentencing purposes. And finally, you have the right to appeal any final decision or order of this court and to have a transcript of these proceedings for that purpose. If you have any questions about the rights I just explained, please ask me when we take up your individual cases. And the court's taking up the case of State versus Amber Sutton, case CR 18-224. Record will reflect the appearance of County Attorney Tad Eichman. The defendant appears in person in the custody of the Saline County Sheriff. Did you understand the constitutional rights I just explained? And you are charged with 3 counts alleged to have occurred in Saline County, Nebraska on or about June 4th, 2018. Count 1 alleges that you did by threatening to use violence, force, physical interference, or obstacle, hinder or impair a law enforcement officer acting under the color of their official authority. That obstructing a peace officer is a Class 1 misdemeanor that carries up to 1 year in jail, up to a $1,000 fine, or both with no minimum. Count 2 alleges that you resisted arrest, that being officers from the Crete Police Department who were attempting to effect your arrest. That is also a Class 1 misdemeanor carrying the same penalty, up to 1 year in jail, up to a $1,000 fine, or both with no minimum. And count 3 alleges that you did unlawfully, knowingly, or intentionally possess or acquire or obtain by misrepresentation, fraud, forgery, deception, or subterfuge, possession of any drug substance not classified as a controlled substance, but can only be dispensed by written or oral prescription of a practitioner. That is a class 3 misdemeanor that carries up to 3 months in jail, up to a $500 fine, or both with no minimum. Do you understand all of those charges and the possible penalties?
Yes.
Do you wish to have an attorney represent you in this case?
Yes.
Are you requesting court-appointed counsel?
Yes.
Okay, I'll need you to raise your right hand. Do you promise to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
And I'll have you move a little closer to the mic if you can, please, the microphone. Do you, for the record, please state your name and address.
Amber Sun, 1025 Longwood Creek, Nebraska.
And are you employed?
No.
And when was the last time you were employed?
Last year.
What is your source of income at this time?
I don't have one.
Okay, and how do you support yourself? Does someone else support you?
Yeah.
Who is that?
My boyfriend's parents and my mom and my boyfriend.
Okay. You have any children?
I do.
How many?
I have 2.
And you have no source of income on your own, then it's just those people helping support you?
Yes.
Does the state wish to make further inquiry, or do you have any objections?
State has no objection to it.
I'll go ahead and appoint the public defender to represent you. That's Mr. Grob. He's actually at the back of the courtroom, so he knows he's being appointed. And I'll continue your case for a couple of weeks so that you can talk to him about this before you come back and enter pleas. We'll also take up bond. You haven't been able to make the current bond. And are you asking the court to consider reducing bond?
Please, yes.
Where would you be living if you were released on bond?
If I was released on bond, I would probably be living back at Longwood, either that or my mom's in
Longwood is where?
Creek.
In Crete, okay. What is the state's position regarding any reduction in the bond?
Your Honor, based upon the nature and circumstances of the offenses charged, the fact that the defendant has a prior charge but not conviction, however, of failure to appear in Lancaster County in 2013. She has a couple of convictions out of Lancaster County Court 2014 and 2015 for what appears to be felonies that were pled down. And based upon her lack of financial resources, lack of employment, the state would submit the current bond is not a reasonable asset remaining.
Thank you, Mr. Eichmann. Well, I think I initially did set it believing that you may be charged with a felony, and you're not charged with a felony, so I am willing to reduce it somewhat. Would somebody be able to post a bond for you if it was lowered?
It's possible, but I doubt it.
All right. Well, I'll reduce the bond to $5,000, 10%, which is our normal bond schedule for a class 1 misdemeanor. So somebody would have to post $500. If they can't post $500, you are entitled to have a bond review after 24 hours, and Mr. Groff would represent you at that hearing. So we'll reschedule your case for June 26th. I don't know whether to set it for 2 o'clock or 11 o'clock. I'm not sure if she'll make bond or not, but
Let's do 11.
let's go ahead and set it for 11 o'clock. Is that all right with the state?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay. All right, so bond is continued as reset at $5,000, 10%. And we'll see you back here in 2 weeks unless you request a bond review prior to that date. Do you have any questions for me?
I was being arrested on, well, no, I guess.
You understand that now you're not charged with a felony, you're charged with misdemeanors, so.
Yes.
Okay.
I was being arrested on a child support warrant from Lancaster, so if I make bond, wouldn't I be transferred to Lancaster?
You probably would, yeah.
Correct.
Yeah,
Okay.
all right. Then we're adjourned and you're remanded. Thank you. Mr. Austin? Court is taking up the case of State versus Jeremy Austin, case CR 18223. Record will reflect the appearance of County Attorney Ted Eichmann. The defendant is present in person in the custody of the Saline County Sheriff. Mr. Austin, did you hear all the constitutional rights that I explained at the beginning?
Yes.
And you're charged with 4 counts alleged to have occurred in Saline County, Nebraska on or about June 4th, 2018. Count 1 alleges that you knowingly, intentionally, or recklessly caused bodily injury to James Bade. That's a class 1 misdemeanor that carries up to 1 year in jail, up to $1,000 fine, or both with no minimum. Count 2 alleges that you caused damage to the property of James Bade, that being tires on an automobile, and caused loss of $500 or less. That's a class 3 misdemeanor that carries up to 3 months in jail, up to a $500 fine, or both with no minimum. In addition, you could be ordered to pay restitution to the victim for any loss that he suffered. Count 3 alleges that you obstructed a police officer, that being Officer Drew Smith of the Creek Police Department. That's a class 1 misdemeanor, carries up to 1 year in jail, up to a $1,000 fine, or both with no minimum. And count 4 alleges that you disturbed the peace and quiet of James Bade. That's a class 3 misdemeanor, carries up to 3 months in jail, up to a $500 fine, or both with no minimum. Do you understand all of those charges and the possible penalties?
Yes, I do.
Do you wish to have an attorney represent you in this matter?
Yes, I do.
Are you requesting court-appointed counsel?
Yes.
Would you raise your right hand, please? Do you promise to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
For the record, please state your name and address.
Jeremy Austin, 1025 Longwood Drive, Creek, Nebraska.
And are you employed?
No.
And when was the last time you worked?
Last year about this time.
And what's your source of income at this time?
My parents are currently supporting me at this time because I'm helping them out as much as I can. They're both disabled.
Okay. So you're not working at all then?
No.
You don't have any source of income? Do you have any cash on hand or money in checking or savings?
No.
What's this state's position? Would you like to make further inquiry or any objection?
The state would not object.
This is not a companion case, is it?
This is a companion.
It is a companion case. Court will appoint counsel to represent you. I'll appoint Justin Kuntz to represent you in this matter. He's an attorney here in town, has an office in Crete, and I'll continue your case for 2 weeks to June 26th. You would wish to have your bond reviewed?
Yes, please.
All right, it's presently set at 10,000, 10%. What's the state's position regarding any reduction in the bond?
Once again, Your Honor, based on the nature and circumstances of the offenses charged, the fact that the defendant has no employment, lack of financial resources, and he does have prior charges for failure to appear in, albeit they are somewhat old, 1999. He also has convictions out of Lancaster County in 2013 and 2015 for felonies. We would submit the current bond is not unreasonable.
Anything more you want to tell me, Mr. Austin?
If my bond could get reduced, that'd be greatly appreciated. My mother has rotator cuff surgery actually tomorrow, and will need as much help as possible at the house.
Okay. Well, I will, as in the other case, the bond was originally set on the basis of a possible felony, so I am willing to reduce it somewhat. I will reduce it to 5,000, 10%, and with the provision that you have no contact with James Bade. Nor be within a block of his residence. So if you can post the bond, that's a condition of the bond, is the no contact. So
Okay.
do you have any questions about that?
No.
Do you think you'll be able to post that bond?
What was that?
Do you think you'll be able to post that bond?
Possibly.
Maybe. I'm going to set your case for June 26th at 2 o'clock for entry of plea. Does that work for the state?
Yes, sure. Thank you.
Sounds like you might be able to postpone it, so. And you need to get in touch with Mr. Kuntz between now and then. If you are unable to post the bond, you are entitled to have a bond review after 24 hours and have Mr. Kuntz represent you at that. We will notify him that he's been appointed, so if you don't make bond, he'll come see you at the jail.
Okay. Well, I have a way to contact him or is he just supposed to come see me at the jail?
If you stay in jail, he'll come see you there.
Okay.
If you're released, there will be information about his contact information for you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yes. Anything else on this case?
No, Your Honor.
All right, thank you. We're adjourned. Jim Fade? Jim Fade is looks like, yeah, we're maybe gonna make connections, maybe? Or not? Looks like maybe it's gonna work. Let's see if we can make the connections first, maybe.
All right.
We can just try and call them.
Don't worry about the paperwork, I'll get it. Jamie, we should be good to go.
We're good on that? Hello?
Hello, hi, did you hear us?
What's that?
Can you hear us?
I can.
Good.
Can you hear me all right?
Yeah, you're good on our end.
All right. You're bringing Ms. Boswell in then?
You want to do Boswell or Crow?
It doesn't matter. Whichever one you want to do first.
Okay, we will get it.
Thank you.
Why don't you?
Good morning, Mr. Trail. Can you hear me all right?
I can.
All right. The court is taking up the case of State of Nebraska versus Aubrey Trail. This is case CR 18232. The record will reflect the appearance of County Attorney Ted Eichmann, as well as Special Deputy County Attorneys Corey O'Brien and Mike Guinan. The defendant appears via jabber from the Saline County Law Enforcement Center. Mr. Trail, I need to advise you of your rights and the procedures in court, the charges and possible penalties. Then we'll take up the appointment of counsel and any other matters that need to be addressed. The court does also note that members of the news media are present in the courtroom pursuant to the Supreme Court's rules on expanded news media coverage. Mr. Trail, you first of all have a right to be represented by an attorney at all stages of the proceedings. You may hire an attorney of your choice. However, if you wish to be represented by counsel and cannot afford an attorney, one could be appointed for you at public expense. You'd be required to answer questions about your financial situation in order to determine if you qualify for court-appointed counsel. You have a right to a speedy trial and a trial by jury on any offense which carries the possibility of a jail sentence. At that trial, you're presumed to be innocent unless and until the state proves you guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. You have a right to confront witnesses the state might call to prove its case. You have a right to present witnesses in your own defense. You can testify yourself if you choose to. However, if you wish to remain silent, that silence cannot be used against you for any purpose. If you are not a citizen of the United States, you're hereby advised that a conviction of the offense for which you've been charged may have the consequence of your removal from the country or the denial of naturalization pursuant to the laws of the United States. You're charged with felonies, so that means in this court you have an additional right to have a prompt preliminary hearing where the state would have to prove there's probable cause to believe felonies were committed and that you committed them. If the state does that or you waive your right to such a hearing, your case would actually be bound over or transferred to the district court because felonies are heard in the district court. You do have a right to appeal any final decision or order of this court and to have a transcript of these proceedings for that purpose. Do you understand your constitutional rights?
Yes, sir.
You are charged in this case, in count 1, it's alleged that on, about, or between the 15th and or 16th days of November 2017, you did, then and there being in Saline County, Nebraska, did kill Sidney Loof purposely and with deliberate and premeditated malice. Murder in the first degree, as charged, is a Class 1A felony that carries a sentence of life imprisonment.
Judge is also charged with one Class 1 felony and the alternative.
Oh, I'm sorry, and a Class 1 felony which carries death, sentence of death, all right. Carries life to death. I have that on my, sorry. The count 2 is charged that on or between the 15th day of November through the 30th day of November 2017, you did then and there knowingly or intentionally throw away or abandon human skeletal remains of Sidney Loof in a place other than a regular place for burial and without issuance of a proper death certificate obtained in accordance with Nebraska statutes. That's a Class 4 felony that carries up to 2 years in prison with 9 to 12 months post-release supervision, up to a $10,000 fine, or both with no minimum. Do you understand both of those charges and the possible penalties?
Yes, sir.
And you understand your right to a preliminary hearing that I explained?
Yes, sir.
Do you wish to be represented by an attorney in this case?
No, Your Honor.
You're not requesting counsel?
No, I have an attorney coming to speak to me tomorrow, and I'll decide then, but right now I'd like to proceed pro se.
All right. Does the state have any comment about that as far as whether standby counsel should be appointed at this time or whether Mr. Trail, I'm not sure if he has the ability to retain his own counsel?
Judge, the state would ask that you appoint standby counsel at least in the parallel and ongoing federal case. I believe he was appointed counsel there. So we'd ask at this point that you appoint counsel. At a later time in these proceedings, we determine that he can afford and wants to retain counsel, then he can make that known to us at that time.
Right. Right. Mr. Trail, given the seriousness of the charges, I am going to go ahead and appoint standby counsel. You, of course, do have a right to represent yourself or to talk to another attorney of your choice, but given the nature and circumstances of these offenses, I am going to appoint standby counsel at this time to protect your rights. I'm going to appoint Joseph Murray and Benjamin Murray, who are in the same firm, to represent you. And I'm going to continue your case for 1 week to June 19th at 11 for election of preliminary hearing. If that works for the state?
That does, Judge.
All right. And as far as setting any bond in this case, does the state wish to have a bond set in this case?
Judge, we'd ask for no bond due to the nature of the charges and circumstances.
All right. The defendant shall be held without bond pending further hearing. Is there anything else from the state's perspective that we should take up today?
Do we have a time for next?
11 o'clock.
Nothing further, Judge.
Any questions for me, Mr. Trail?
Is the 19th a preliminary hearing, or?
It will be election of preliminary hearing where you tell me if you want to have a preliminary hearing or not.
I can tell you now I want to have one as soon as possible.
All right. Well, I'm going to go ahead and keep it on the schedule as an election because I want standby counsel to review that, and we wouldn't be able to schedule one quite that quickly anyway. So we'll go ahead and leave it on the calendar for next week, but I'll keep in mind that you're requesting a preliminary hearing. So
Yes, ma'am.
thank you. Anything further?
No.
Anything further from the state?
No, Your Honor.
All right. Thank you. We're adjourned.
Order two.
Can you hear me, Ms. Boswell?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. The court is taking up the State of Nebraska versus Bailey Boswell, case CR 18-231. Record will reflect the appearance of County Attorney Ted Eichmann. Special Deputy County Attorneys Mike Guinan and Corey O'Brien are present. The defendant appears via jabber from the Saline County Law Enforcement Center. Ms. Boswell, I need to advise you of all your rights and the procedures in court. Then we'll go through the charges and possible penalties and take up appointment of counsel and any other matters. You have a right to be represented by an attorney at all stages of the proceedings. You may hire an attorney of your choice. However, if you wish to be represented by counsel, cannot afford one could be appointed for you at public expense. You have a right to a speedy trial and a trial by jury on any offense which carries the possibility of a jail sentence. At that trial, you're presumed to be innocent unless and until the state proves you guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. You have a right to confront witnesses the state might call to prove its case. You have a right to present witnesses in your own defense. You can testify yourself if you choose to. However, if you wish to remain silent, that silence cannot be used against you for any purpose. If you're not a citizen of the United States, you're hereby advised that a conviction of the offense for which you've been charged may have the consequence of your removal from the country or the denial of naturalization pursuant to the laws of the United States. You're charged with felonies, so that means in this court you have an additional right to have a prompt preliminary hearing where the state would have to prove there's probable cause to believe that felonies were committed and that you committed them. If the state does that, or you waive your right to such a hearing, your case would then be transferred or bound over to the district court because felonies are heard in the district court. You do have a right to appeal any final decision or order of this court and to have a transcript of these proceedings for that purpose. Do you understand your constitutional rights?
Yes, ma'am.
In this case, you're charged with 2 counts. Count 1 alleges that on or about or between the 15th and or 16th days of November 2017 in Saline County, Nebraska, you did then and there kill Sidney Loof purposely and with deliberate and premeditated malice. That's a Class 1 or a Class 1A felony. Class 1A felony carries a life sentence. Class 1 felony carries a death penalty. Count 2 alleges that on, about, or between the 15th day of November through the 30th day of November 2017, you did then and there knowingly or intentionally throw away or abandon human skeletal remains of Sidney Loof in a place other than a regular place for burial and without issuance of a proper death certificate obtained in accordance with Nebraska statutes. That's a Class 4 felony that carries up to 2 years in prison with 9 to 12 months post-release supervision, up to a $10,000 fine, or both with no minimum. Do you understand both of those charges and the possible penalties?
Yes, ma'am.
Do you wish to have an attorney represent you in this case?
Yes, ma'am.
Any objection to court appointing counsel?
No objection.
I'm going to appoint the Commission on Public Advocacy to represent you. Ms. Loof, one of the attorneys, or multiple attorneys from that commission will be handling your case. I've already talked to them and they've agreed to represent you in this matter. I'm going to continue the case for election of preliminary hearing to next week, June 19th at 11 a.m. so that you can talk to your attorneys between now and then as to whether you wish to have a preliminary hearing in this court that I previously explained. Do you understand those things?
Yes, ma'am.
And as far as any bond, you wish that to be held without bond in this case as well?
Yes, Judge.
No bond is allowed in this case. And any other matters that I've overlooked or that you think we need to take up, Mr. Guinan?
Not from the state.
All right. Do you have any questions, Ms. Boswell?
No, ma'am.
All right. Then we will see you next week, and your attorneys will be in contact with you between now and then, okay?
Thank you.
Thank you. We're adjourned.
Thank you, Judge.
Thank you.